Would you look at the quality of this camera? Can we talk about this? It's like a world of difference. And my viewfinder is now above me, so I apologize if I look up and not at the lens. I'm gonna try my best. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This video is gonna be a little bit different, and you're probably wondering by the title of this video what this could possibly be about. But today I wanna tell you guys a little bit more about myself and a story that is a very large part of who I am, and that is the story of how I met Brian. Now you're probably wondering who Brian is. Well, Brian is not a person. Brian is not a pet. Brian is not a fictional character. Brian is more of an it, and Brian is the mass in my brainstem. Now I know what you're thinking. Please don't freak out. I do have a mass in my brainstem. As far as we know, it is not fatal. It has not caused me any problems in other than emotional things, of course. But I wanted to tell you guys a story about how I came to find out that I do have my mass. And that is because tomorrow I will be driving to Nashville to meet with a neurosurgeon specialist for my 6-month checkup. So I really wanted to send this out in the world in hopes that those of you who pray will send some prayers my way, and those of you who don't, if you'll just send good vibes and good thoughts my way. But I guess just to tell you guys a little bit more about me, I thought I would share the story with you. So let's go back 6 months. So on October 30th of 2013, I was living in Nashville. As I do, I go to school there, if you guys don't know that. And I was working at CMT. And I was sitting at my desk one day. I had just gotten to work about 9:45 in the morning, and I was working on my computer doing just some stuff that I usually did, and I was looking at my computer screen, and I was looking at the bottom corner, and up the top corner of my screen kind of started to make this like weird, you know, I don't know, like it was kind of like almost like it was waving, like the computer was messing up. And every time I looked back at the corner, the top corner of the screen, it would go away. So I was like, okay, that's pretty weird. I don't really know what all that is about. So I just kind of kept going about my day, kept seeing it, and it was for a couple minutes, and then I looked over at the wall next to my desk to look at something on my calendar, and I realized that the wall was doing it as well, and so I immediately realized that it was my eye. And I kind of panicked a little bit. I didn't really know what was going on. It was kind of this like gray haze blur up in the corner of my eye, of my left eye. And so of course I kind of panicked a little bit, and I get up to go call my mom, and I was like going to the bathroom to call her because I didn't really know what was happening, and so I wanted to talk to her because I'd also been sick the day before, so I thought that maybe something was going on. It just didn't feel right, and I kind of knew in the pit of my stomach that just something wasn't right. But on my way to the bathroom, I ran into a coworker of mine, and she was like, "You're very pale, you look like you don't feel good, what's going on? Talk to me." And I told her that that something weird was happening with my eye, and I didn't know what was going on, and I was going to try to call my mom. And she took me over and sat me down, and by the time she sat me down at my desk, I had lost all vision in my left eye. And it was kind of slowly moving over into my right eye. And so obviously panicked. My mom lives in Memphis, Tennessee, so she was about 3 hours away. No, but luckily she was in Jackson, Tennessee, so she was about an hour and 45 minutes away from me at this point. But I call her, not really sure what I should do. And she tells me that I need to go to the emergency room, or I need to go to like a minor med. And obviously at this point I have no vision in my left eye, and I obviously can't drive a car. And so somebody from HR comes over, human resources in the business world, and they're like, okay, well, you have a couple of options. We could call an ambulance, or we could call the fire department and have them send over their first responders, which are the people that come, check your vitals, make sure you're okay, and then they'll determine whether or not to take you to the hospital. And so that's what I agreed to. I thought that that would be the best option. And so the first responders came in a few minutes later. I'm sitting at my desk. They've given me food. They've given me water. There's like 5 people standing around me trying to make sure that I'm okay. I still can't see. And so the first responders show up, but when they show up with 7 firefighters in a stretcher. And so essentially what happens is the paramedic who took care of me, you know, like the main paramedic, was extremely nice, but he looked at me and he said, we're gonna check your vitals, but we're gonna do it in the ambulance because it's not normal for 20-year-olds to be having neurological symptoms, and so we're gonna take you directly to the hospital. So I take my first ride in an ambulance by myself. They load me on a stretcher. They don't allow me to walk, which is pretty embarrassing because they didn't know if I would pass out if I had the ability to walk. And so they put me on a stretcher, strapped me in, I will tell you, like straps around my body, and they lead me down and out of the CMT building into an ambulance and drive me to the hospital. And trying to call my mom from the back of an ambulance. She's freaking out, obviously. And I get to the emergency room and there are about 5 doctors on me as soon as I walk in the door. And that was one of the first signs that I knew something wasn't right. Because usually when you go into an emergency room, you wait a long time before you see a doctor. And basically they rolled me into a room, and then within a matter of 30 seconds, I had, one doctor who came in, and I was in a teaching hospital, so there was a couple different doctors that I saw the whole time I was there. But one doctor came in and did a bunch of like neurological tests, like basic things that they did to me in the ambulance as well, like making sure I could like respond to commands, that I could follow their fingers when they did different things with my eyes. And at this point, again, still can't see, so I'm still pretty freaked out. And it's really, really overwhelming. There are 1.5 million people in and out of my hospital room. And so, like I said, at this point, I am completely alone. I am blind in one eye, and my mom is 1 hour and 45 minutes away. So I'm extremely, extremely overwhelmed. And at one point they come in and they're like, okay, well, we're gonna do an MRI of your head because it's just a routine thing. We wanna check and make sure, if there's something going wrong. They're like, it's just routine, don't worry about it. And I am mildly claustrophobic. I have had an MRI done on my head before when I was having migraines when I was younger, and absolutely panicked, and they had to put me to sleep. And so of course I am already overwhelmed by the amount of people and the fact that I can't see and the fact that I just rode an ambulance by myself and my mom is hours away. And so I start to just panic, and they end up giving me some medicine to calm me down. But then a few minutes later, my stepdad's best friend walked in the door. He happened to be in Nashville that day, and my mom got a hold of him, and he came and he sat with me. And I just cried. I remember just weeping at the sight of him walking in the door because the nurses were not nice to me. They were just, very, like, get the job done, whatever they had to do, and they just weren't nice to me at all. One lady told me I shouldn't be calling my mom while she was driving, and I remember freaking out, but just seeing a familiar face, I, just like burst into tears. And he came in about 15 minutes before I went into my MRI. And they gave me some medicine to calm me down, so I made it through the MRI okay. And by the time I got out, my mom was there, and I was kind of doped up, to be totally honest with you. So I didn't like cry when she was there, but I was so happy to see her, and I just was, so, like I said, so overwhelmed. But they roll me back into the room. I get back in my, bed or whatever, and about 15 minutes later, a doctor and a nurse walk in, and they shut the door. And if you've watched enough medical dramas, you know that a doctor walking back in quickly after you've had a brain scan is not usually a good sign. And I knew pretty much immediately that something was wrong, especially when the nurse walked in behind him and shut the door. And then he looked at my mom and he said, "Are you family?" And she said, "Yes, I'm her mother." And he said, "Okay." And sits down next to me, and he says, and I'll never ever forget this, and I'm getting a little emotional talking about it. He looks at me and he says, "Your scans didn't come back exactly as we had hoped." And then he said, "There is a mass in your brain." And from that point on, I didn't really hear anything else he said. I heard occasional words. I heard that I was going to be admitted to the hospital. I heard the words neurosurgeon, oncologist, radiation specialist, which in layman's terms means brain surgeon, cancer doctor, and radiology. And I had a full-blown panic attack, as you can imagine. And I remember my mom, the doctor leaving, and my mom crawling up into bed with me, and the both of us crying. And I remember looking at her and saying, I'm not ready to go. And the truth is that I wasn't. I really wasn't. I didn't want to die. And that was my immediate thought. You know, when somebody tells you that there's a mass in your brain, that tends to be the first thing you think. And then they give me some medicine to help, you know, take the panic attack away. And then about an hour later, they admit me to the hospital, move me to a room. And I spend about another 10, 12 hours in the hospital. And they tell me that I'm not allowed to eat, that I'm not allowed to drink, because there is a possibility that I would be having neurosurgery later that night. And that was the scariest moment of my life. I was there for about, like I said, another 12 hours. Some of my friends came and sat with me, and my stepdad flew from Washington, D.C. He was there from work, and my mom called him, and he jumped on the first flight, and he came with no luggage. My mom had no luggage. My mom was in her business suit. She had been working in Jackson, Tennessee. She had no clothes, and they came and they sat with me, and we cried a lot, and we were very worried, and essentially I was there for a long time, and we were waiting to get the word as to whether or not I would actually be going into surgery. At that point, the radiologist and the neurosurgeon that were looking at my scans, one of them had to go into emergency surgery, obviously the neurosurgeon, and so he sent his assistant in at that point to come and to talk to us and tell us that we weren't having surgery. But that was when I learned that the mass was not only in my brain, it was in my brain stem, which is, if you guys don't know a lot about, you know, anatomy and stuff, your brain stem is essentially what controls all the functions of your body. It's where all of your nerves and things pass through, and as my doctor described it, it is the highest real estate area of your brain, meaning that it's also the most dangerous. And I learned at that point that the mass that was in my brain was about the size of the top of your thumb in diameter, and that it was wrapped around some of my nerves, which meant that it was not able to be operated on, and it would not be removed, and that they were not entirely sure what the mass is, which is why I call it a mass and not a tumor. They said that it's most likely either a small benign tumor. They don't believe it's cancerous. It doesn't show any signs of inflammation. It doesn't show any signs of growing. The only worry they have is that it did not appear on my first scans that I talked about earlier that I gotten for migraines. It wasn't on those, and so the fact that it's appeared now a couple years later is a little troublesome, but it doesn't show any signs of growing, it doesn't show any inflammation, so they don't think that it has anything to do with cancer, so they think it's either a small benign tumor or what is called a capillary telangiectasia, which is essentially a mass of blood vessels that have kind of clumped together. And obviously it's not something that you can operate on, because if you were to try to biopsy it and it was a capillary telangiectasia, there's a possibility that it would bleed out and kill me in a matter of seconds. So that's reassuring to know. So essentially I found out that my blindness had nothing to do with my brain, which was really difficult to accept because it was a very scary time, but they told me that it was essentially just an optical migraine, which is essentially just the nerves in your eyes kind of freak out like when you have a migraine, but you don't have the pain. And so that was unrelated. I did eventually get my vision back, but yeah, those two were unrelated. And then they told me that I would not be having surgery, and that, you know, essentially everything was fine and we're just gonna release you from the hospital, which is a very, very difficult concept when somebody tells you that, you know, after you've gone blind and you just sat in a hospital room for the past 12 hours, you know, preparing to have brain surgery. You know, I was prepared for them to shave my head, and I asked my mom if she would save my hair. That's really shallow and sad, but I just kind of emotionally attached to my hair, and I just was really sad about the fact that they might have to shave my head to do the surgery. And you know, it's a really hard concept when somebody tells you that it's nothing to worry about and you're gonna go home after all of that happens. And it was quite a terrifying time. And the reason I call this brain mass Brian is because, kind of as a joke, you know, you have to make light of the situation. So it was like sitting there with a bunch of my friends in my hospital room when they came to visit me, and I was trying to text some friends from home about what was going on, and obviously I had to use the word brain quite frequently, and for some reason my phone just kept auto-correcting it to Brian. So at one point I was like, I'm just gonna name him Brian, and that's how I'm gonna refer to him from now on. And my friends all refer to it as Brian, and like my parents like make, you know, we all make jokes about it. It's obviously not something that is like a joking matter because it's pretty serious, but it, you know, you have to make light of the situation, and if you don't, you're gonna go crazy, and that's how I feel about it. So I named him Brian. I was sent home from the hospital the next day and told that essentially I would have another scan done in 6 months to check its growth. And I ended up going to a second doctor for a second opinion, and he told us essentially the same thing. And that was the first time I actually saw it. I did not see my scans until I was a couple weeks into it. So that was the moment that really just absolutely terrified me, and it took me a really, really long time to be okay with it. So that's the story of how I met Brian, and now 6 months has rolled around, or roughly, it's been a little bit more than that because it was on Halloween, so it's been 6 or 7 months. And so I'm here now, and tomorrow will be my 6-month checkup, and honestly I'm terrified. I've been scared for a little while now. I had a really bad panic attack yesterday, and so I just wanted to share the story. So the point of this video is just to share the story, especially with those who know me personally in my real life and were there with me through this whole experience. I don't know that I've ever really told my side of the story, but also just to ask for prayers and good thoughts as I go into tomorrow and essentially do the whole process over again. It's a little less scary this time, but it still is, you know, gotta do it all over again. Lots more doctors, lots more MRIs and tests and things. So, you know, I just hoping for prayers and good thoughts, and I hope that if any of you have gone through something like this, that we can kind of communicate, because I don't know anybody else that's ever dealt with what I went through, and I would love to know if you guys have, or if you know someone that has. So I'm gonna go and get ready for tomorrow, I guess. But I love you guys. Thank you so much for your constant love and support. And like I said, if you've ever been through this, please contact me. I'd love to talk to you. And I guess I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.